Imagine having so much gold that every time you walked into a new city, the entire economy of that city collapsed. Not because of war, not because of disease, simply because you were too rich. This man didn't just own a palace. He owned palaces in cities that he hadn't even visited yet. He fed thousands of strangers every single day, not out of politics, not for fame, simply because it was Tuesday. His name was Mansa Musa, and historians believe he was, by every measure we have, the single wealthiest human being who has ever lived on this earth. More than Elon Musk, more than Jeff Bezos, more than any king, any emperor, any dynasty. And yet, almost nobody taught you his name in school. Today, that changes. To understand Mansa Musa, you first need to understand the world he came from. Close your eyes for a moment. Forget everything you think you know about Africa. Forget the images you've seen in textbooks, because the Africa of the 1300s was nothing like what most people imagine. In the heart of West Africa, along the banks of the Niger River, existed one of the most powerful empires the ancient world had ever seen, the Mali Empire. It stretched across 2 million square kilometers. To put that in perspective, that is larger than Western Europe, larger than India. This was not a collection of small villages. This was a civilization, with universities, with libraries, with trade routes that stretched from the forests of West Africa all the way to the deserts of North Africa and beyond, into the markets of the Middle East. The city of Timbuktu alone had a university that attracted 25,000 students. At a time when most of Europe was still fighting over scraps of land, and sitting at the center of all of this was gold. Unimaginable amounts of gold. Historians estimate that the Mali Empire controlled nearly half of the world's gold supply, half of the entire world. And in the year 1280, into this world of ancient power and limitless wealth, a boy was born. His name was Musa Keita. Nobody called him Mansa yet. That title, Mansa, it means King of Kings. He would have to earn that, and the road to earning it was not straightforward. It never is for the greatest men in history. Musa was not supposed to be king. Let that sink in for a moment. The richest human being in all of history was never meant to sit on the throne. He was a deputy, a stand-in, a placeholder. You see, in the Mali Empire, when a king went away on a journey, he would appoint a trusted man to watch over the kingdom, a caretaker. And that caretaker was Musa. The king at that time was Abu Bakr II. And Abu Bakr had a dream, an obsession really. He believed, with every fiber of his being, that somewhere beyond the Atlantic Ocean there was another world, another land, waiting to be discovered. This was the year 1311, more than 180 years before Christopher Columbus even set foot on a ship. So Abu Bakr did something extraordinary. He built a fleet. Not just any fleet. He built 2,000 boats. 2,000. Loaded with food, water, gold, and soldiers. And one morning he stood at the edge of the Atlantic Ocean, looked back at his empire one last time, and sailed west, into the unknown. He was never seen again. No boat returned. No message came back. No survivor. Just silence. 2,000 boats. Gone. And suddenly, the most powerful empire in the world had no king except one man, the caretaker, the stand-in, the man nobody had chosen. Musa Keita stepped forward. He sat on the throne. And from that moment, history would never be the same. Because Musa was not just going to be a king. He was going to become a legend. He was going to become Mansa Musa, king of kings, ruler of the Mali Empire, and the single wealthiest person who has ever walked this earth. Every religion has its sacred journeys. For Muslims, one of the greatest acts of faith is the Hajj, the pilgrimage to the holy city of Mecca. And in the year 1324, Mansa Musa decided it was time to make his Hajj. Now, when an ordinary person makes this journey, they pack their bags. They say goodbye to their family. They travel. But Mansa Musa was not an ordinary person. So when Mansa Musa decided to travel, he brought his entire world with him. Historians and eyewitnesses recorded what they saw. And what they saw was beyond imagination. 60,000 people. Let that number sit with you. 60,000 men, women, scholars, soldiers, and servants, all walking together across the Sahara Desert. 500 personal servants walked directly ahead of him, each one carrying a staff of pure gold, weighing nearly 3 kilograms each. Behind him, a caravan of 80 camels, each camel carrying 135 kilograms of gold dust. Not gold coins, gold dust, loose, in bags, on camels, 80 of them. And as this ocean of people moved slowly across the sands of the Sahara, something extraordinary began to happen. Mansa Musa gave. He gave to every city he passed through. He gave to the poor on the roadsides. He gave to the mosques. He gave to the scholars. He gave to strangers. He gave to people he would never meet again. In the city of Cairo, he spent so much gold and gave away so much that the value of gold itself collapsed. Think about what that means. Gold has been valuable for thousands of years. Every civilization and every culture, every empire in history has agreed that gold is precious. Mansa Musa spent so much of it in Cairo, so freely, so carelessly, that suddenly there was too much gold in the market. And when there is too much of something, it loses its value. The Egyptian economy took 12 years to recover. 12 years from one man's generosity on his way to Mecca. The Sultan of Mali was not trying to destroy Cairo's economy. He was simply being himself, generous beyond all reason, beyond all measure, beyond anything the world had ever seen. And when he finally arrived in Mecca, the entire Islamic world knew his name. Kings sent him letters. Scholars begged to return with him. Architects offered their services. The world had seen powerful men before, but never one quite like this. Never one who was powerful and generous at the same time. Mansa Musa began his journey home, richer in spirit, but for the first time in his life, slightly lower on gold. Mansa Musa returned home, and the world followed him. Architects from the finest cities of the Islamic world packed their bags and traveled to Mali. Scholars left their universities, poets left their courts, engineers left their projects, all of them drawn to this one man, this one kingdom, this one vision. And Mansa Musa received them all. He had brought back with him from his journey to Mecca, one man in particular, a brilliant Arab architect named Abu Ishaq as-Sahili. And together, these two men began to build. Not just buildings, not just palaces. They built a civilization. The great Djinguereber Mosque of Timbuktu, still standing today, was designed by as-Sahili under the personal supervision of Mansa Musa. He paid as-Sahili 200 kilograms of gold just for the design. 200 kilograms for a design. The University of Sankora in Timbuktu became one of the greatest centers of learning in the entire medieval world. 25,000 students studying mathematics, astronomy, literature, law, medicine, at a time when most of the world didn't even have schools. Timbuktu had more books per citizen than any city on earth. Libraries filled with manuscripts, hundreds of thousands of them, written in Arabic, in local languages, on science, on poetry, on philosophy. Mansa Musa didn't just collect gold, he collected knowledge. He understood something that very few rulers in history have ever understood, that the greatest investment is not in walls, not in armies, not in gold, but in minds. His empire stretched across modern-day Mali, Senegal, Gambia, Guinea, Niger, Nigeria, Chad, and Mauritania. 24 cities under one crown, one vision, one man. European maps of the era, drawn by cartographers who had never visited Africa, still showed Mansa Musa sitting on his throne in the center of the continent, crown on his head, gold in his hand. Because even from a distance, even across oceans, the world knew. He was real, he was powerful, he was unlike anything they had ever seen. But here's the thing about greatness, it is always temporary. No empire lasts forever. No king rules without end. And slowly, so slowly that perhaps even Mansa Musa didn't notice, the shadows began to gather around his throne, around his empire, around the life he had so carefully built. The man who had given so much gold to the world was beginning to run out of time. Not gold. Time. The one thing no amount of wealth can ever buy. Mansa Musa ruled for 25 years, a quarter of a century, of building, of giving, of dreaming. And then, sometime around the year 1337, he died. Historians are not even sure of the exact date. The richest man who ever lived, and nobody recorded the day he left this world. Think about that. We know the exact date Columbus landed in America. We know the exact date Napoleon was defeated. We know the exact moment Armstrong stepped on the moon. But the day the wealthiest human being in all of history took his last breath was not considered important enough to write down. He was succeeded by his son, Magan I, a young man, unprepared, inexperienced. And within just a few years of Mansa Musa's death, the empire began to fracture. Rivals attacked from the north. Tribes rebelled from within. The gold routes were cut. The universities fell silent. The libraries, those magnificent libraries when Adoyabek were raided, burned. Hundreds of thousands of manuscripts, representing centuries of African knowledge, turned to ash. The Jingureber Mosque survived. It still stands today in Timbuktu, a lonely monument to a man the world forgot too quickly. Within 50 years of Mansa Musa's death, the Mali Empire had effectively collapsed. The gold was gone, the scholars had scattered, the libraries were dust, and the man himself, the King of Kings, the giver of gold, the builder of civilizations, faded from the memory of the world. For centuries, his name was barely spoken, his story barely told. Children grew up learning about kings and emperors who were a fraction of what he was. And Mansa Musa, the greatest of them all, was left in the footnotes, if he was mentioned at all. Now, I want you to pause for a moment and think about what this story is really about, because it is not just about gold. It is not just about an ancient empire. It is about something much closer to home. Mansa Musa had everything, more than everything. He had wealth that makes today's billionaires look like they are counting coins. He had power that stretched across a continent. He had the love and respect of millions. And yet, the empire he spent his life building didn't survive one generation after him. Everything he built, everything he gave, everything he sacrificed for was gone within 50 years. So what does that teach us? Maybe it teaches us that legacy is not about what you build, but about the values you pass on. Maybe it teaches us that the greatest tragedy is not losing your wealth, but losing your story, having your chapter and your untold chapter buried under centuries of silence. Mansa Musa owned half the world, but in the end, the world did not remember him. Until now. You remembered him today? And that perhaps is the most powerful thing any of us can do for the great souls of history. It's simply tell their story. This has been Untold Chapters. If this story moved you, share it with one person who needs to hear it. And if you want to hear the next chapter, the next forgotten story, the next name history tried to erase, then subscribe, because there are thousands of stories like this one, waiting in the silence to finally be heard.